your own training. So, Yves, I'll kind of let you take it away from here, but
okay.
I suppose the first thing to do is to just really talk everyone through the basics of form and length of pin, etc.
Yeah. Okay, so first thing I'll go through, I'll just show a little bit of equipment, and then I'll show you proper techniques and maybe like some higher level techniques and stuff if you want to perform in arm lifting. Some little tricks that I learned over the years that can help you if you're thinking of competing or anything like that. So first thing, I'll just bring this close so you guys can see. And you're gonna cut this, right, Tom? And like,
yeah.
Okay. So I'll just get to another thing here. Okay. All right. A little bit low on light here. Is this close enough from here? Can you see well enough, or should I bring this closer?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's pretty good actually.
All right. So first, I'll run you guys down through some equipment. So the most popular, especially for climbers, is the portable hangboard. So I would recommend, doesn't really matter the brand, but something that has a good size edge with comfy radius, so something that's a little bit round so it doesn't damage your skin. So my favorite size rungs that I like to train with is 18. I think this is a really good one to build maximum strength and stuff. It's comfortable, it won't damage your skin. I really like a small edge, so like a 6mm. And one of the big advantage of using a device like this is, you know, you can start at, like, if you're bad at crimping or you don't like you find that, which a lot of climbers do find the crimping position very uncomfortable. One of the best ways to get used to it is start at really low level, like, so start like at 5-10 pounds and just getting used to getting in this position. So I use a lot the 6mm, 18, and sometimes I'll use the 10, but a little bit less because it tends to create a split a little bit in my skin when I use this size edge, just because it falls into where the first knuckle is. So anyway, for this one, then another one is the wrist wrench. It's really good to developing like very strong wrist and wrist, also forearms, because it engages your forearms very well. And slopers too, pinch as well, because like, oops, sorry about that, I don't know what happened. Oh, just give me a sec. Hello? Oh, give me a sec, Tom, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm still... I'm sorry, baby. I'm still in the meeting. Bye. Alright, sorry about that. My wife called.
That happens to me every now and again.
Broke the system.
My phone
Yeah, good thing we can cut it then. So, okay, well, I'll start it back with the wrist wrench. Still good? Still recording?
Yeah, still recording, yeah.
Okay, so next one is, here's the wrist wrench. So basically it's a tube with a strap around it, and there's a lot of different ways to use it. Most of us use it, so we wrap the strap and we keep the size that the strap is on, that's wrapped, that's where you keep your thumb on it. So this is the method, and it's really good to train to get very strong wrists and open hand strength. It wants to open up your hand, it wants to open up your wrists, so you'll develop a lot of forearm strength, wrist, and also squeeze a lot of pinch strength as well in this one. So this is the method I like to use. So there's different ways. Some people use it, especially arm wrestlers, they'll use it on nutsiless type machine, you know, like and they'll attach it and they'll do like curls and stuff. So that's another one if you want to build a lot of forearm strength and you're more into arm lifting or bodybuilding. So if you kind of roll the weights like that, then you're going to build very strong forearms and wrists as well. So another very popular one. Those are my two favorite for climbing. And then the rolling handle. There's a bunch of different ones. This one's the Rolling Thunder, very popular. It's a handle that spins like that. Another one, I really like this one because because it's made of plastic, it doesn't rust. One thing that I've noticed with a lot of the grip implements is all made of steel, and sometimes they rust. I just don't like that too much. So I prefer something made of wood or plastic when I can find it. So this is why this is one of my favorite ones. And this one is fat grip. So if you want to train like the axle or something, but you don't want to buy another bar, this is something that costs like maybe like 30 bucks, and you can put it on any powerlifting bar, and it makes the same diameter. Super useful, and it's you'll get the same workout that you would get from an axle. So if you're into that, this is really good. I got these recently, and yeah, it's really great. Then a pinch block, so same thing. This is Iron Mine from Iron Mine. It's like a 3-inch block. There's again a bunch of different ones. You can get 2 hands, but this is more convenient if you're gonna train from home or gonna bring this to the gym. Like, you know, it fits in your climbing bag. Or the Lattice one with so this one has 2. So you have your edge, which I think is 20 millimeters, and then you're gonna have a pinch at the top. So another great device. Then you'll need a lifting pin. So this is really great if you want to do anything lifting from the floor. This is kind of like a must that you should get. It's going to simplify. You can put your plates. Some are made for Olympic size plate with 2-inch holes, and then there's the standard ones that are a little bit more skinny. So it depends again on the equipment you have at home or that you're thinking of purchasing. So just think about that before you select the pin you need. For climbing purposes, I usually prefer a smaller one, but again, it really depends on how much weight if you're gonna train at the gym and you're using bumper plates, you're gonna need a big pin because the bumper plates are really big. So if you have steel plates at your gym or at home, those tend to be a bit smaller, so you can put a lot of weight on a smaller pin. But why you want a small pin is that it becomes a lot when you're gonna start loading weight, especially if you're a climber, and a lot of the device comes with a string like this, a rope. So if you put it on a large pin and I'm here, my arm's already bent here, I don't have anywhere to go with my toes. So you want something that's a bit shorter. Shorter you can have, or if you can shorten your rope by folding it in half, that's going to be like the first thing you want to do. It's very important. Or else that's one of the mistakes I always see climbers do, is they roll the weight. So like this, they have a really long rope and they start rowing the weight. So you're going to be very limited by the amount of weight you can row, instead of like the weight you can lift. So ideally you can get a smaller pin. It's going to help you a lot. So a smaller pin like this, and then this way I can keep my arms straight and just lift with my legs. I don't have to bend my arms. Okay. Second thing you want to keep in mind, if technique wise, that I see a lot of mistakes, is you want to lift over your shoulders. So your shoulders here, your arms in the center of your body, and you want to lift. You want to put the weight right under your shoulder, okay, where your armpit is. This is where the best place to lift. So you keep your feet as far forward as you can. So usually like in the middle of the feet is good for me, and I'll lift like this. That sets me up in a very safe position, puts the weight right in the middle of my body. So that's another mistake I see a lot of people doing when they start either arm lifting or even training from the ground, from climbing. They'll lift with the weights very far in front of them or to the side. Okay, so that the best I find is to lift in the center and keeping it right under the shoulder here. So that's pretty much it for that. If you're lucky, I can go over some techniques if you want, like each device I can show some little tips to lift more weights and stuff. So I'll start with the Rolling Thunder. So my technique, if you want to lift a little bit more weight for this, it's a lot about getting, I position the training tool right here, not like inside the palm, but more like on the outside here. So I'll push it really deep, and I'll try to keep the middle finger at the center of the device. So you'll see it's a little bit off-centered right now. So it's not right in the middle. I don't try to put my hand in the middle, but I try to put, so this here, and I put my middle finger right in the center. You'll see my hand's kind of like at an angle like this. So as long as it doesn't touch the metal on the outside, that's a good lift. You won't you'll get a proper lift from it. So I put the inside of my finger like that, so the fulcrum of my thumb here, and then I'll lift like that. And I'll try to kind of like just tilt. You're supposed to lift it straight, but I'll tilt it just a tiny bit too. Just a tiny bit, it helps quite a bit. I'll get a lot more purchase, especially if you have a small hand. If you try to hold it just straight, you won't have that much purchase. But if you kind of like go deep with the thumb first and reach, then you're gonna get a little bit closer, which will help a lot with your lifts. So that's kind of like the trick that I have for my technique for this. If you're pinching, I can show same thing. I won't pinch if I'm pinching for grips or something like that. I won't just grab the weight like that. I will use that same part I was using here, so the side of the thumb. So I'll go really deep and get some purchase, and I usually keep my fingers straight. So in climbing, we tend to like, you know, curl our fingers like this. We're very strong like that. In grip, we try to get as much skin and contact on the weight as possible to increase the friction, and we'll kind of like pronate a little bit the wrist to kind of like create tension on it. So instead of keeping it just straight, I'll create a little bit tension. So it kind of like creates tension like this. So it kind of like cams in into my hand, right? Okay. Another thing, I forgot to tell you, but this is a big one. So this is probably the biggest mistake, or a lot of people do if you want to increase your weights right away in arm lifting or something, is setting up the grip implement or whatever you're going to train with. So I see a lot of people, they're just going to either just go and grab it like that, or they're just going to kind of like grab it like this. I grab it and I set my hand. I use this hand to set it up. Set up your hand. Same with a portable hangboard or something like this. I'm not just gonna grab it and like put my hand there. I'm gonna set my hand here. So I'll use this hand to kind of like hold it, stabilize it, set my hand and set the weight inside. Okay? So that's another tip. Everything I'll set it up. So if I'm using the pinch, I'm gonna grab the pinch and I'm gonna set my hand really deep. I'm not just gonna grab the pinch and then lift it. So I'll set my hand. That's gonna make a huge difference in your numbers. So that's a thing right there. I can show some technique too for Saxon bar, might as well. So I'll show, if you're lucky enough to have a Saxon bar at your gym, or just set this up real quick. Alright, so the Saxon bar, if you're lucky enough to have one of these at your gym, or if you know a friend that's a welder, I think it's not too difficult to make, but they're a bit bigger, and so the technique is very different for me. So I'll try, again, always think of getting leverage from different angles. So one that I'll do, so I'm going to get this angle, so here, so that when I lift, it kind of cams into my hand, if it makes sense. And then I'm going to get another angle here, so I'm going to pronate the bar a little bit to the front. So when I lift, same thing, it kind of cams into my hand this way. So I pronate this way, so when I lift, it's going to kind of like create tension in my hand, and like that. And then same with this angle, so I'm here, and when it's going to go like that, it's going to cam into my hands. So those are the two angles, and I use a lot of my my lats for a lot of compression. So I'm not just gonna use my hands, I will compress the bar. And I think that's why I have a lot of big numbers on this implement compared to just one hand pinch, because I'm gonna squeeze with my back. And the technique's a bit different than a standard deadlift. It's more like a good morning. And I think that's because you need the compression. You want to be forward and squeeze the bar, other than instead of just being straight and lifting. So you squeeze the bar, and then like it's more like a Romanian deadlift. So I'll show you guys. So same thing. I hold it with one hand. I set my hand. I try to get a lot of purchase. I use the side of my finger and I try to reach as far as possible. I set the other one, make sure you're in the center, and then I use my, same thing, I use my legs to lift the weight. So here I straighten up and I lift here. So I get all the leverage. I get this one, I get the one from when I'm here and then it's straightening up. So it gives me a lot of leverage, and I try to be my shoulders over the bar. I don't want to be here and I don't want to be here. I don't know if it makes sense, but yeah, so those are kind of like some of the techniques for the bar, for the pinch bar. I'll just out of the way. I'll move this out here. So yeah, I think that's kind of like what I was thinking of showing. I can show, if you want, I can show kind of like what kind of like a normal session would look like with the reps and all that, how I warm up. If you want that, or if you have other ideas, just let me know. I can add more stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, maybe like a little demo on like progression of how you would warm up into a lift session would be like amazing. This is fucking brilliant.
It's fun, yeah? We're having fun.
Like proper interesting.
Yeah, having a lot of fun. It's cool. Yeah, I can show a little bit. I'll use kind of like round numbers for demo purposes. It's gonna be a bit easier.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, just like just to give people the
yeah. Let's get some chalk too. The weight is good, it's the right spot, you can see pretty well.
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent. Yeah. Alright. Okay, so next thing, I thought I'd do maybe a demo on kind of like a progression, how I would warm up for a specific lift. So a specific warm up for a lift and the type of increments I would do to get to my main training lift. So there's two sections. So one is my progressive warm up where I kind of like build up my reps and my volume up till I get to my main training sets, what I would call. So for today we'll do 80% of my max. That's a really good range, I think, for most strength training protocol. And the amount of reps and volume, I don't have a set one where it's always okay, I'm going to do 4 reps. And it changes. So the volume in my training, it's hard to say that I don't always use the same thing over and over again. So there's days where my loads are a bit higher, some days where my loads are going to be lower, and then medium. I try to play with those volumes all the time. I don't always do 80s, 4 sets at 80%, for 4 reps or something like that. It changes. So, but I'll show an example how I progress into it. So warm up here, my warm up set. So again, it really depends how much I'm going to lift. It's going to depend on what I'm training for. Am I training for a grip event? Am I training for a long boulder? I'm going to look at if it's a 9 move boulder or something like that, and I have to be on for about 40 seconds. Then I'll try to match that to my training, and that's going to dictate what I lift. But for today, we'll do kind of like an example of maybe progression that I do sometimes. So usually if I start at about 50. So for this example, just to make it really simple and keep the weights like for the mat for everyone to make it a bit easier, we'll say that my max for 18 millimeter edge is going to be 100 kilos. So I would usually start around 50 or 60% of my 1 rep max when I warm up. It's not a warm up because it's a specific warm up. So usually I'll do like a little bit of warm up beforehand, and then I'll get into these sets. And I found warming up this way really builds a lot of quality into my training and like volume. It also adds up because these reps also count. Like they're not. I count them into my training, and it builds a lot of volumes and quality as well. Okay, so let's get started. So 50 kilos here. So I'll start at 50, and same thing. I use this hand to set up my other hand really well. I'll keep my shoulder over the device, right over. Okay, and I lift with my legs. So 1, so if I do reps, I just lift up, and then I come down. That's how I measure my intensity for this type of training. 5, and so I'll stop here. So around 8 reps usually is a good, if I want to keep my energy for the higher reps, usually I'll stop around 8 or 10, depending on how I feel. And then I will also, every time I'll do this, I'll assess how am I feeling. So either by a wellness questionnaire, so I was like, okay, how am I feeling the intensity today? Was like, do I feel pain in my joint, fatigue, anything like that, to see, you know, if I'm recovering well from my training or not. So that's something I've been implementing for a little bit, and it's been working really well for me in my training. You know, I know when I'm in a state of adaptation, and I can keep going up with my weight, or I should reduce the intensity and stuff. So if that makes sense. So the next step, usually I take about 4 or 5 minutes in between my sets, but I won't just stand still or do something. I'll do something else. So I'll cycle between the strength training exercise. So I would do some pull-ups, or some weighted pull-ups, or some curls, or whatever exercise that I have for that day. And sometimes I'll do some stretching as well. So that's one thing that I've been working on a lot lately, is that I find is stopping me in my climbing, is my mobility is one of the big factors. So I've been spending a lot of time working on my mobility to improve my my climbing. So say the time is done. Usually I'll do increments about, it depends on how much like if I'm lifting, say on a 6 millimeter edge or something, the weight increments are going to be a little bit smaller. So we can think about 10% is a good increment to do on a weight. So if I'm going for 50, I could do 60 is a good increment to do. So we can think in terms of percentage, okay? So if you're lifting on a small edge, it doesn't mean you're doing 10 kilos, you're adding 10 kilos on this, is not going to feel the same as on a small edge. The increment's going to be a lot bigger. So go in terms of percentages a little bit better. That's what I usually do. Say we'll go on this again, same thing, set it up, and I lift with my leg. And then the nice thing is, like, as you're going up, you can really assess. It's like, okay, I'm feeling really good today. You know, I'm going to be able to push the weights up. So yeah, that's it. Then I would go up. The next round I'll probably go 70, and then my main sets will probably be 80s. It'd be a really good, for most training session, around 80% is really good. Sometimes when I do really high volume, I'll stop around 70, but I'll do a lot more reps. And then if I'm going, especially in like specific phase when I'm preparing for an event, then I'll start jacking up the weights like around 90, or even sometimes a bit doing like heavy singles or doubles. And then, yeah, usually, and I'll do very few sets, like usually 2, or sometimes I do a pyramid like I'm doing like that right now. So I'll go up like 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 95, 100, and then I'm done. It's like I'll go up and then stop. Sometimes I'll come back down too. So yeah, so those are kind of like example of different loading patterns that I do. Same thing. So sometimes I do when I'm doing the pinch, the sportable hangboard, I love to do reps. I don't know why, but for me, I love structuring my volume and intensity with the repetition. If I'm doing more, if I'm gonna do hangs, I usually prefer to do it on the hangboard. Yeah, but for me, from lifting from the floor, this works really well, and I can structure my my intensity, and it would transfer really well to climbing. But yeah, for the floor, I like to use this method. So I'll show again. So 70. Still feeling really good. Like sometimes I'll like right now I feel quite good. So I won't, maybe I'll usually I like to stop around 6 or 5 when the weight start to go up, the reps start to go down till I get to my main set, which usually I do 4 repetition at 80 is really good for me. But if I feel really good, sometimes I'll pull a couple extras, and I'll write it down though. Everything I do, so I assess where I am, and then I monitor, and I also track everything down. It's a good habit, I think, to write down everything you can. The more information you have, you can look at your climbing and see, okay, I was like, you can go back sometimes a few months, like what was I doing like back then? Like I was climbing really well. So you can go back, you can assess what you're doing and stuff. So yeah, sometimes I'll increase the reps a little bit. So say if I'm feeling really good right now, I'll add a couple more reps. I was like, okay, this feels really easy. So sometimes that means you're like, same thing, you're in an adaptation phase where you're getting stronger, you can put more load, you can increase the volume of your training, and it still feels really easy to you. You feel great. That means you're progressing. Usually it's a good sign. It means you're like in an adaptation phase while you're so that you're on the right track. Another example too I could do of this is like, say if I was lifting right now and I'm at my external load, so the loads I'm doing, my training lifts, feel very hard, but I'm still at low weights. I'm feeling like everything's hard. Usually that's a sign of like you're not adapting really well to your training. So sometimes it's best to kind of like slow down, kind of like go back a few steps, or maybe look at what's going on. Maybe sometimes it can be very different things. There's a lot of elements that can affect you. It could be stress, sleep, and other things. But you go back and like look at what you're doing in your training, or maybe you're just doing too much. So you can pull things down a little bit, and that way. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, that's totally mega. That's amazing.
Okay, so we'll do 80. 80, so usually those are like this. When I get to around 80%, this is where usually my main sets are. For most training, 80, 85, sometimes on like the peaking phase, I can increase up to like 90% or even like a little bit higher. Sometimes I'll retest my max but most of my strength training is done around this intensity. 80, 85% for me works really well. So we'll go for that. Usually 4. But again, sometimes if I feel very good, I'll try to do 4 more. You can go for like, that's another way you can progress a little bit in your training. You can go for like rep PRs instead of just doing like weights, you know. It's like I feel good, I'm gonna do an extra rep and it feels good. So it's another way, like for me, it's always been motivating to track down my progress and seeing that I'm getting better. Like that's what I think is so appealing for me for training, is this, you can quantify and you can also see progress, you know. Climbing is very hard because the setting completely change all the time, the conditions, the style. It's very hard to say, am I better, or it's just the setting's a bit easier in the gym right now. So, but with training, you know, you're using always the same thing. You can see your progress. You can tell that you're in a better shape, or you're getting weaker or anything like that. So that's what I'm really appealed. What the appeal for me is of climbing. Anyway, so 80%. Good. Another thing I didn't talk about is when I do strength training, or it's always something I've done, but I didn't know about it. It took a long time before I actually learned about this principle, is I had a buffer. So usually when I do exercise, I don't go to complete failure. I usually stop 1 or 2 reps, or if it's time, I'll stop a few seconds before complete fail, like till I fall, you know. So I try to stop before complete exhaustion. So that's something that I've always done in my training, and that worked really well for me. Yeah. So that's it. So I would do that, and then that's my main set. I would rest like 5 minutes or so, or 4 or 5 minutes, and I would do, depending on the week again, or where I'm at, I'll do something about 4 reps, 4 sets. I mean 4 or 5 sets. Again, it really depends on the week. Sometimes my load is a bit smaller. I'll do 2 sets, but that gives you kind of like an idea of how I bring the weights up and how I structure a training session. Yeah. So that's what I had for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good? Not too bad?
Yeah. That's like absolutely just banging. So good. Yeah. I think people are going to really enjoy this.